Okay, I'm Supreme Understanding, and I'm telling the story of what happened in the courthouse to my family. All right, Nalani,
Yes.
please ask your questions at the end of the story. Okay, wait
Okay.
to the end. All right. Um, all right. So how does the story begin? Okay. So there's some details that I can't tell if I use this video, but there were some things that I was worried about going into this courthouse that like I was like I don't know what's gonna happen when I go in there, what they gonna hit me with. So I'm going in with a whole lot of concerns. So the backstory to this situation is I got arrested driving through Georgia on the way home from my little journey through Florida, and I got they got me with a few things, but they had me with weed and speeding, right? And so now I'm in court behind it, and what I'm facing is a difficult situation because um, even though it's the weed they saying this it's personal amount, and the speeding they can it's just fine or whatever. I'm concerned about two things: me having a suspended license because then that creates a problem with me taking care of what I mean, driving you and getting getting people everywhere they need to be. Then the second thing is I can't be on probation where if I smell like weed because I'm like, look, y'all, they didn't get me for smoking weed. They got me for having it. You know what I mean? And the reason we have it is because we dealing with cancer, and part of dealing with cancer in an effective way, if you're gonna deal with the symptoms, you're gonna have to have cannabis. Like that's everybody know that. Everybody that know that. That's why there's states that legalized it. We in a state where it's not legal. We in a state where it hit the Senate, but it didn't make it nowhere. Beyond that, so none of that really helped me in being in jail. And I didn't think it was gonna really help me much being in court because I'm like I'm going in there representing myself. Um, and so I really kind of didn't know what to expect. Like I'm really going in there like I don't know what's about to happen. I'm thinking they might get me because of something else, and there's some other things in the back of my mind. So when I go in and they read my name and they don't immediately take me away, I'm like relieved. I'm like, okay, well, that's not a situation. But now I'm like, let me see what they're proposing for me. I'm waiting so long for them to get to me because I went there without knowing nothing. Like I almost didn't even make it on time. But that's again other details. So um, I fall asleep in the courthouse because I had no sleep. Like I'm just I had to leave early in the morning. It barely started. He a white redneck. Like this is South Georgia. He started throwing me out. He's like, man, you got you know what I mean? Like he wanted to get me out of there, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm here. I'm staying. I ain't going nowhere. And when they finally call me up, I end up explaining what I want to do, and they tell me that I got to talk to I guess the solicitor who is basically like the prosecutor, right? He represents the state. And he's telling me, man, you're gonna have to be on probation. We're gonna talk, we're gonna mark down the speeding thing, you're gonna pay this money, but then you're gonna have to be on probation. And here's what that means: you can't be in no place to serve alcohol. You know what I mean? You can't drink. You can't have. You can't. Basically, you can't have. There can't be no marijuana nowhere around you. And if you do, for the next 12 months, if that ever, you're gonna get randomly tested. Basically being on papers. Anybody that know about probation know what that means. So I'm like, well, that's a situation that I can't do. And I explained to him, like, he's a little Asian dude, and I explained to him, like, look, what we're dealing with is something different. This ain't no recreational smoking. This is a treatment. This is something that's happening because of this. And I explained to him the circumstances. And I'm like, look, I just need you to use whatever power you have. And he's like, I have nothing. There's no law. There's no way I can help you. This is the minimum that we can offer you. And I'm like, man, some of these things you got to at least mark off a few of these things. And I'm talking to him, and I'm coming to him as a man. And me and him is I'm engaging him like, look, bro, like I'm coming here representing myself. And he looked like with fear, like he couldn't do nothing. And I was like, all right, man. And I just really felt like it was over because, name for real, if I was on papers, it makes it difficult because it's like anytime if they call me in for a test and my hair got it in it, if I smell like it, it's a problem. I can't afford to go to jail behind, and we doing this for a medical reason. So, but I'm thinking like, man, what now? When they call me up to finally receive the sentence, right? And the judge had been roasting people all the whole morning. She'd been roasting people, especially people drug offenses. It was like basically like whatever the maximum was, she was throwing it at me. And so when she finally got to me, she's like, "Man, do you have anything to say. Now I got to give you some backstory. When I got up there, I did get on my square. You know what I mean? Like I got on my square, did my little, for those who know what the square is, I went through all my little things and I made sure I sent out my little gestures, made sure people knew I was in the room and knew who I was. And there's a story to that. Like, and then the bailiff, he seen me, he made contact, he responded, and but he was like, his gestures was like, nah, I see what you doing, but that ain't gonna fly in here, right? And I was like, I hit him back with the 7, and I was like, nah, I got this. Mm. And when I engaged the judge, and she asked me like, do you have anything to say? I just went into a build. I just was like, look, let's first begin with the fact that they didn't get me on driving under the influence. They don't have me as smoking weed. What they know is that this is in the car. This is cannabis. It's in the car. Now let me tell you what this is for. Let me tell you what this is. Let me tell you why I was rushing, why I'm speeding. And I went into this build, and I built on how cannabis is a medicine and it's not a drug and it shouldn't be treated as such in their states. And unfortunately, I'm in a state where that ain't the case. When I got done, I ain't worried about that. When I got done building, I'm talking about the whole courtroom was captivated. I'm talking about everybody. I really said it for everybody. I said it loud enough for everybody. And everybody just stopped. Now, meanwhile, while I'm building, I'm making direct eye contact with the judge, and I'm letting her know who I am. Like, I'm letting them know I'm under my, you know what I mean? I'm under my jurisdiction. I'm representing myself. You know what I mean? And I ain't doing no quoting no codes and quoting no books. It's really just my demeanor. It's really my presentation. It speaks for itself. Like, they know that I'm not falling up under, because I can't fall up under the law, not in this situation. Like, it's just one where I can't accept it. Man, people persistent. When I get done, she just stopped and she's like, her jaw dropped. She said, you make a very persuasive argument. And she looked at me, and then she looked and she said, did you make this argument to the state? And I said, yes, I did. She looked at him. I looked at him. He couldn't look at me. He looked at her. She gave him a look. She said, I think I'm going to do something different. He just looked like, and he hung his head, right? Like he knew. He couldn't look at me still. She says, I'm going to take off this. He don't have to do this. He don't have to do that. He don't have to do this. He don't have to go to random tests. He don't have to see nobody every month. He don't have to. Matter of fact, this man shouldn't even have to be on probation. You know who it is out there? I know who it is too. Relax. He'll wait. He good. Nalani on it. Let me finish the story. Are you listening to the story? Okay, it's a good story. All right, it's a good story, right? So she says, is there any reason why we can't do that for this man? She says it to the dude. Little Asian dude, like he was trying to make a name for himself, you know what I mean? Basically just trying to not rock the boat too much, and his response would kill me. His voice quivered, right? I mean, literally quivered, and he was like, there's no law against it. And he had just told me that there was no law that he could, now he's saying there's no law against it. He literally, and like you could tell that she had gotten Nalani, relax. You could tell that she had got, you know what I mean? And he turned red. Like he just could never look at me, and he turned red. I'm sitting down now. I'm not standing up, and she's like, yo, you know what? Matter of fact, go ahead and sit down. I sit down in the back. She called the next girl. The next girl got a possession charge too. She tried to get this. Now look, she went from roasting people to trying to give the girl a chance to plead not guilty. Like the girl was pleading guilty, and she was asking the questions to lead her to be like, yo, you sure you don't want to plead not guilty? Like she literally changed. And so then I'm sitting in the back, and the bailiff's is like, nah, come on up. I gotta sit in the front. Like it was symbolic. Like there was some things going on. Like there was like, nah, you are an honored guest. You know what I mean? Like you sit in the front row. And so then they called me back up, and she says, look, you're not doing none of this. Oh wait. So while I'm sitting in the back though, right? I look at the prosecutor, right? This dude is now crying. Like he's crying. He literally leaves the room and goes to excuse himself and has to come back. Like I wouldn't I wouldn't even want to make this up. Like this is really what happened. And so when they called me back up, and I got the paperwork to prove it, when she called me back up, she's like, "Look, you don't have no probation. You don't have to come back. You're done here. You don't have none of this. Not only that, I'm reducing the fines for what you was charged in the first place when we had you locked up, and we're gonna write you a check, and we're gonna send you your money back. The state is paying me." Like, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So that's the story. That's what went on, and honestly, like, I really just, I really there was a point where I was like, man, this ain't even gonna happen. And if I'd have really went off with the first rejection, I could have been like, hell, I could have been discouraged just by the bailiff. But then if I'd have been off this, even off the second situation, I could have been like, man, this ain't no way. But when I got in that situation where I was standing there, I realized I was standing on my square, but I realized I wasn't even standing upright. And man, the moment I just really just stood upright and just straightened up, like everybody's eyes lit up. And from that moment on, when the judge passed down her new ruling, everybody was just smiling, like almost like they wanted to clap. Like the bailiffs was just looking like, wow. Judge even said like, "Yo, you did this in South Georgia. This do not happen very often. You know what I mean? Please know that." And I'm like, man, I'm gonna push so this happens all the times. This supposed to be the regular. This is supposed to be the way. Like you ain't supposed to go to prison behind that. Peace.